Aristides from South Africa to Haiti. But right now, as we talk about the catastrophe that has befallen Japan, and particularly the nuclear aspects of it, I thought it was critical that we should be able to look at what's happening here in South Africa, because countries all over the world are now looking at their nuclear policy. Tomorrow, there's expected to be a major protest here in Johannesburg, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But right now, talking about this issue of nuclear South Africa, the only country in Africa to have nuclear power plants. There are two, the Koeberg nuclear power station near Cape Town. We're joined now by David Fig, who is an economist. He is an environmentalist, a sociologist, and has written, among other books, Uranium Road, Questioning South Africa's Nuclear Direction. David Fig, welcome to Democracy Now! Talk about how it is that South Africa is the only country in Africa to have nuclear power.
Well, South Africa had a lot of uranium, and so the first time that we were integrated into the world nuclear industry was through providing uranium to the bomb programs of your country, the United States, and Britain in the 40s and 50s. And then as prizes, we were given research reactors by President Eisenhower, and later during apartheid, the world turned a blind eye while we made nuclear weapons. And so the nuclear energy industry was just a smokescreen in a way for arming apartheid during the Cold War.
And talk about these nuclear power plants. You have two. You stopped one.
Well, we have two that were built in the 80s by the French. They are coming, they're about in the middle of their shelf life. They're getting older and older. And our current government is looking to expand from providing 5% of our energy from nuclear to trebling that to about 14–15%.
How did you stop the one, and what was its model? I understand similar to those in the United States.
We, South Africa, tried to develop something called the pebble bed modular reactor. It has various names in different places. It's also being developed in the US, but too much money was thrown at it. Huge big subsidies were given to the designers, who had to change the design approximately 5 times and had very little to show for it, and we would have had to throw much more money at it to get to a demonstration plant. And last year we managed to get the government to cancel the whole program.
How has Japan affected South Africa? What has taken place there? It's interesting. We're in the studios right now of many different networks in Johannesburg. We're right near the headquarters of SABC, South African Broadcasting Corporation, and here global networks from around the world. NHK, Japan, South Africa is right downstairs. But how has this catastrophe affected you here?
I think firstly it's shown up the industry as being extremely dangerous and problematic. And we need to really assess as a country whether we want to go down the nuclear road for further energy purposes. We have a strong lobby in the country which, for example, the head of the French atomic industry sits on our president's investment advisory council. So there's strong lobbying to get further reactors built. But as people who are interested in securing energy and energy for the whole country, not just a few mining companies, we need to say that nuclear is not the appropriate road anymore.
Well, I want to talk about what that appropriate road is, and I want to bring our second guest into this conversation. We're joined right now by Makoma Lekalakala, and she is with an organization here in South Africa that is called Earth Rights. This is an organization that deals with energy policy. It's actually called Earthlife-Africa. And the organization has just put out a report called Second-Class Citizens, Gender, Energy, and Climate Change in South Africa. It's being released this week. In fact, it's being released as you are preparing for this large protest. Explain what this protest will be about tomorrow.
The protest tomorrow comes in the light of the Japan nuclear energy industry disasters. and we feel that South Africa cannot go that route. As South African citizens, we consent. We have been raising issues around nuclear. We've been campaigning around nuclear for quite a long time. Actually, one of the organizations, Earthlife-Africa, Johannesburg in 2004, had actually taken the then Department of Energy to court over the nuclear plants, because the issue was why were the views of civil society not taken into account before the nuclear plant could be okayed. And part of what we're going to be protesting about, actually we're calling for the government and ESCOM to stop and not extend their nuclear plans for the future. Japan has given a warning point, and we cannot go that route. We need to have responsible policies, responsible commitments, and as South Africa, the government and the people of South Africa. ESCOM is the power utility for the state.
Talk about how women have been left out of the making of energy policy, which is really your focus.
Historically, South African policy and legislation, there's a legacy of the past, where in the apartheid era it was more patriarchal and male-dominated, and in the so-called new democracy, we still have that kind of legacy going through the ranks around policy and legislation. At the moment, when policy is being developed in the country, the language that is being spoken there is of megawatts and macroeconomics rather than what would people want. And the language that is used is not in terms of what people would understand and would be able to make inputs around that. So that is basically the problem that we have. And also, we have left much of the policies and legislation. There's so much barriers that ordinary people are unable to participate. There has been a lot of flaws around the good legislations that we have, the processes that we have in the country, which makes women, especially poor women, not to be able to participate and have influence in energy and policy legislation, because they're the ones who actually are the energy managers in their homes and in the whole community.
Well, explain what you mean by they're the ones who are the energy managers.
Women are the ones mostly who are responsible for making sure that there's light in the house, there's food that is being cooked, there's also water that will be boiled for tea or for other stuff that may be needed in the house, and also that they would know how much electricity would be needed for a week. Women in the country, for energy efficiency, they've also tried to move away from our traditional meals and use meals that are not really part of our South African, gourmet. Because of energy efficiency, we have now tended to eat more salads, which are like raw, not cooked, rather than have our mukhodi and stamp mukhodi. It's like tribe and samp, it's from millimil. This is like part of our traditional meals, which take longer to cook. So women have tended to move away from that, and they're the ones who know how much energy would be needed in a house. But the other thing which becomes a much more concern is that most of the poor communities in this country use prepaid electricity. That is, you buy first your power, then you can be able to use it. It's not like the conventional meter system where you'd be able to pay at the end of the month.
It's like a prepaid phone card.
Yes, this has become a problem for a lot of women, because that denies them access to energy, to electricity, and they're the ones who have to make sure that they are part of managing how much energy is needed in the house. But when that was introduced, women were not part of that decision making. We don't even know how that came about. The only thing is that we are presented with something that we had to manage and had to deal with it, and that has denied our right to energy.
Makoma, if you could talk about what renewable means, renewable energy, and what that would look like here in South Africa. Well, aren't we talking about a new South Africa?
For us, renewable energy is very broad. We've got abundant solar in Africa, and South Africa is one of those countries. We have a lot of wind in the country. We have we can make use of biogas. Everybody, human waste can produce on energy. With the 48 million South Africans, I think we've got enough energy from biogas. But this is a source, a base that is not being exploited. And with solar, we can have various forms of energy from solar, and this is hugely unexploited. We've got wind power also in the country. Those would be the three basics that I would say they would be able to supply or complement the energy security that we need in the country, rather than going for nuclear, which is very dirty, expensive, and unwanted. It's a threat to world peace. And renewable energy for us, it's what we'd opt for, and that has been part of our campaigns and our demands. But what we've realized is that the South African government doesn't have political will to invest in renewable energy options. They would rather invest in dirty and dangerous energy forms, and also rely on fossil fuel energy that has got catastrophic effects on climate change.
Makoma Lekalakala and David Fig with us today here on Democracy Now! As we broadcast from Johannesburg, South Africa, and we'll continue to broadcast the latest news of the Aristides leaving this country where they've been in exile for 7 years to return to their homeland, Haiti. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez in New York.
Thank you, Amy. And we'll be covering Amy's trip with President Aristide back to Haiti in the coming days. Tune into democracynow.org for updates as well.